Hello and welcome to the QuadCast. I'm the founder and host, John McAlevey. This podcast, while mainly for and about folks like me who have had their lives affected by a spinal cord injury, is really for anyone who just wants to be inspired. In this space, I speak with individuals who have had life-changing injuries and accidents, and yet in spite of insurmountable odds in many cases, have gone on to do amazing things with those lives. I'm reminded of the old metaphor that when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Well, my guests, they take those lemons and roll right over them with their wheelchairs and rollators on their journey. I'd like to thank you for lending me your ears for another session of OT and PT for the soul. So, what do you say we get this show on the road? Hello and welcome to the QuadCast. I'm John McAlevey. Today's edition is special on a number of occasions. First and foremost, it's my first episode of 2026. My goodness, how did we get to 2026? It feels like it was just the 1980s, I know, at least for me. Secondly, it's my first episode in video. I was told a long time ago that I have a face for radio, and so I stuck with audio for all this time and was able to finish 86 episodes, which all can be found on my website, which is www.quadcast.org. And also it's special because I have a special guest today. My friend Vanessa Osman, who I've gotten to know over the last month, she was recommended to me from Dr. Jean Zanka, who I work with at Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation. And so we were able to hammer out a date and a time, and that is today. So Vanessa, I am so happy to have you join me here. Welcome to the QuadCast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so grateful to be here with you.
What I usually do with my shows, Vanessa, is I like to begin at the beginning. So why don't you tell us, where did you grow up and what were some things that you enjoyed doing in your youth?
Well, I was born in New Jersey, so we have that connection, you and I.
We do.
I had a wonderful, exciting childhood because every summer we would go down to the shore. I was in North Jersey. I really loved Wildwood and the boardwalk and all of that, and eventually moved to New Hampshire for a year and a half before I ended up moving overseas to Dubai. And that's where I spent majority of my formative years. I was there from sixth grade until graduation from high school. And I was very active in the arts early on, believe it or not, in New Hampshire in the 90s. And this was the late 90s. They still had home ec.
Oh, home ec.
Home ec. I mean, it feels
My
very like
goodness.
70s and kitschy now, but
Yeah.
got to do some arts and crafts, got to do some cooking, and was in my first play at 10.
10 years old.
Yeah.
Speaking of plays, I had an episode I spoke with the great Ali Stroker. She came on with me and she was amazing. I told her that I was not an arts person. I was more of an athlete growing up. But my junior year in high school, one of my best friends who was also an athlete with me, he was a real ham, shall we say. And he was always wanting to be the head of all the plays, be the lead role. And so he told me, he said, John, if you want to get out of the house like a couple nights a week, we have rehearsals at nighttime. So why don't you come join? We were doing Guys and Dolls. And so I said, I don't want to do that. I'm afraid of my own shadow. But when he told me that I could get out of the house a couple nights a week, I was in. And so I took a role in the back. I was one of the guys that was rolling the dice with Bat Masterson. And so it was a lot of fun. But that's cool. So you were into the arts at a young age.
Definitely. I also played Sergeant Sarah Brown in my high school production of Guys and Dolls, so
Oh my gosh, we have that in common.
we have that in common too. My
Jersey.
father didn't have a son, so I was like the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the firstborn. So it was required that I try everything. So
Okay.
I was the athlete, but I also was very much into the arts. I was scuba diving at 14, and I think Dubai really fostered that kind of environment
Yeah.
where it was very active. Obviously, the lifestyle, the weather, all of that just sort of bred competition and travel. Actually, the first time I made the track and field team, we traveled to Kuwait and I was in seventh grade. So
Wow.
eh,
Tell me
those,
about tell me about Dubai. How did you wind up moving to Dubai from Jersey to Dubai? Is it a bit of a difference, right?
yeah. And my early background is just as creative. My mom is an Irish Catholic. My dad is Egyptian Muslim. He came to this country. They met in the VIP diner in Jersey City. A
Oh
great
gosh.
story there. I won't go into it, but just two unlikely people meeting, falling in
Mm-hmm.
love, starting a family. And my dad came to this country with a dream to make $1 million, make something of himself. And he joined FedEx and started at the bottom
Okay.
and worked his way up, became managing director of the Northeast region. And by the time we were in New Hampshire, won a job transfer. It was between Irvine, California and Dubai, UAE. And my
Wow.
mother said, "Over my dead body, we're moving." And he said, "Let's just go check it out." And when my parents came back from that trip, 91, they were like, "We're sold. We're going."
Yeah.
So I'm
So
very
how old were
grateful for
you?
that transition.
Yeah, how old were you when you got there?
I was 11 years old.
Okay.
And up until that point, I was very much like you, shy, retreated into the fantasy world more often than not in my bedroom, just writing, reading. And when I moved to Dubai, something switched and started talking to boys. I'd never done that before, just started being very social.
Stella
And
got her groove back.
yeah, she found out she had a groove. And then, I got into like debate and business and the junior achievement program, Girl Scouts. I feel like I was just constantly doing something. Sometimes I didn't know how I would like finish a project or study for that test. It was always by the skin of my teeth because I was
Right.
just involved in everything.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So tell us about the day that changed your life. What do
Mm.
you remember before, during, and in the immediate aftermath of the accident that brings us to the spinal cord injury?
Wow. As an overachiever, I was just touched on doing too much and not sort of having like a very grounded sense of self, but all the while, just striving for all these goals. And so I left Dubai, I went and graduated college in Boston and decided to move back to Dubai where I would be, hopefully the goal was to be a big fish in a small pond. That was the thinking.
Mm,
And I started working in marketing, communications, business development, and I was a managing editor for the Dubai Media City magazine. So I was having this really great experience of being a young professional in a fast-paced working environment with probably 12 women at the company I was with. And all the while, the other goal was to become an entrepreneur. So I
mhm.
did still have that immense pressure on me. I was in a relationship. I was part of the partying lifestyle. There's a very incredible social scene in Dubai, as
Yeah,
one can imagine. And even being part of the business world, it was required of me to be at events and galas and film festivals. So the life was so busy and so colorful and so wonderful, but in other ways, there was that contrast that was hidden, the part that I didn't really talk about, the part that was dark for me, just sort of not having that innate sense of self. And,
right,
things happen, right? We make choices and we tend to, maybe when we're young, not have the resources that we need in order to decompress or de-stress or be honest about what's going on in our life. I found
sure.
myself in a situation and a relationship that might have been just too much for me. But anyway, it led me to the desert that day where we were participating in a fun drive. And although it wasn't a race or necessarily a competition, we were speeding along and having fun. And it was a sponsored fun drive by a newspaper and various companies. And the driver of the vehicle was the person I was in a relationship with for a
Sure.
few years. And there was two other people present. I was sitting behind him, and it's unclear as to what really triggered the loss of the steering wheel, but
Mhm.
I remember turning around, taking my seatbelt off, turning around for that split second and sensing something was wrong, and when I turned around, I screamed his name 3 times, and then there was a blackout, and when I woke
Oh.
up, the Toyota Land Cruiser was on my legs, on my body.
Mm,
There was just this eerie sense of calm. And I asked my friends who had all just witnessed that because they were all behind us driving, so they had
right,
seen the whole thing, if they could, in a very polite voice, if they wouldn't mind pulling the truck off of my legs. None the wiser that anything tragic had really happened. I just knew I
right?
couldn't move.
Yeah.
felt like I was sinking in the sand and I was looking up at the
Yeah,
sky.
yeah. "Can you please get the truck off of me?
When
I
you get
need
a
to get
chance,
going."
please.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. It's a very similar answer, Vanessa, I get from not only other folks that I've spoken with, but in my personal encounter with when I first had my accident it was just like this calm and I was numb. It was just complete numbness. And it wasn't pain. I don't know if you had pain. I didn't have any pain. I was just like completely numb. And it was like there was this peace and it was quiet and it was just weird. So did you feel pain or anything like that?
I didn't feel pain either.
Yeah,
And I
that's
just had
weird.
this profound sense of peace and
Mm,
well-being and, like, I was transitioning, I was leaving. And I
unbelievable.
sort of, I won't go into it,
Mm,
but in too much detail,
right,
but I did have a conversation in that space that I was in where
right.
I was ready to go, and the voice told me, "It's not your time, you have to stay."
Wow, that's so awesome.
To come back to that present moment and be like, "Okay, right. Now
Yeah,
there's this couple sitting above me that I just met 20 minutes ago on the bathroom break, and they're asking me where I work, and they're asking me mundane, stupid questions,
yeah.
rhetorical questions even. Why are they asking me this?" And
Right.
I'm thinking, "My head's bleeding." And they're saying, "No, it's not." So it took me right back into that present moment where something was happening, right?
Yeah.
In my case, one of the things that's hard to cope with even to this day is that I had to wait an hour and 20 minutes for a helicopter rescue.
Well, that was my next question. You're in the middle of the desert. What happens next? You had to get a chopper to come and get you, and then from there, where were you taken, and what
I
did your
was
doctors tell you initially?
Yes. So, after struggling to stay alive for that hour and 20 minutes, because of course things got hairy and
Right.
there was screaming and voices and things happening, and no one wanted to tell me the reality of my boyfriend's situation. We were side by side. I remember lifted into a helicopter. I remember that being a struggle. And when we arrived at the hospital in Dubai, um, gosh, I just even remembered them cutting off my clothes, the sounds of those shears cutting
Mm,
off my clothes. I can never forget. I even
never.
remember the times when they were shaving parts of my head for the stabilization of that. In my case, my father was in Belgium, my mother was in India, one sister was in New Jersey, and the other sister was in the capital, Abu Dhabi. So I was alone essentially in
Oh,
Dubai
jeez.
at 23 years old. And I think they called my uncle first. Remember, there's even like a language barrier here and very thick accents. And,
Right,
you
of
know,
course.
so you're sort of in and out of for me, I was in and out of consciousness. Um, but there was a 10-day period I was in that hospital, and there was a lot of hallucinating.
Mhm.
But I remember the hallway filled with hundreds, if not thousands, of people waiting during my 8-hour surgery, where they told my father that I had a 5% chance of survival.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't think in those days they were equipped for the level of surgery that I needed because I had broken my C5, C6,
Yeah.
obviously rendered quadriplegic instantly from the spinal cord injury.
Uh-huh.
So there happened to be a wonderful surgeon passing through Dubai at that
Oh,
hospital
wow.
from Iran who got on the phone with someone, I believe, from his cohort at the Mayo
Uh-huh.
Clinic who dictated my 8-hour surgery. And
Stop.
that's how I'm still here today
Stop. An Iranian doctor over the telephone is getting instructions from the Mayo Clinic.
in the US.
Wow, that is the first. I've never heard anything like that.
Me neither. And I haven't connected with him yet. It's always a case of the yets, you know?
Yeah, you gotta find him. He was a lifesaver for you.
So I think it was December 18th, 2003, the accident happened. December 30th, I was in an air ambulance that came and picked me up from Switzerland to Dubai. We
Mhm.
refueled, I believe, in Switzerland again, and then in uh, Nova Scotia, and then
Okay.
landed in New Jersey, where once again, now the quadriplegic Vanessa finds herself in New Jersey yet again.
Back in
And this
Jersey.
time, yeah, I love New Jersey, but there was a lot of talk about where's the best place for our daughter? Where's the best place for Vanessa to get the rehabilitation? Is it Germany? Is it India? Is it so in the end, New Jersey won, and I ended up at Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation.
And
Um,
here we have another thing in common.
Another thing.
Yeah, and I know when we spoke prior, neither one of us really knew too much about Kessler before we had our spinal cord injuries. I know that I grew up 8 miles from the building, okay, and I
Wild.
used to drive by it 100 times a year, playing on different sports teams, going back and forth, and never really looked up the hill. I mean, I looked up the hill, but I didn't know what went on up there. And little did I know, 33 years later, it would be such an important part of my life, and obviously your life as well. So tell me about it. You arrive at Kessler as a newly spinal cord injured C5. Is it complete?
C6 complete, Asia A.
C5. Okay, Asia A. And what is that like? Tell me how that hits you.
Wow. It was such a such a
Yeah.
contrast from Dubai. We're in heat and sand to come to snow and ice, and then it's New Year's Eve. And I'm
Mm.
laying in the same room that Christopher Reeve had at Kessler. And I end up with the wonderful Dr. Stephen Kirschblum as my physiatrist, my rehab spinal cord injury doctor.
Another
And
thing we have in common,
I mean, how lucky are we? And
the great Dr.
it's
Kirschblum.
kismet that we were brought together, but also just to have had that experience at Kessler
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the greatest doctor of my lifetime.
Mhm. He's
Greatest
world
top 5
renowned.
greatest humans I've ever met.
Yeah. And can I tell you a quick story? I interviewed
Please.
him for an episode of my show, and I asked him, I said, what did you do prior to, becoming this world renowned physiatrist? And he looked away from the camera, or we weren't on camera, but he took a pause and he said, John, at one point in my life, I was fixing coffee machines. And I said, what? Fixing? So you've gone from fixing coffee machines to fixing people. And he's, like you said, you revere the man. For me, he was my doctor. He was my friend. He was almost like a father figure for me. And he's still checking in on the kid these days. And I really value that from him. And so you did your PT and OT at Kessler. How long were you an inpatient? Because I was there back in 92 for about 5 months, almost 6 months. And nowadays I work on the wing as the peer mentoring coordinator. And if people get 5 weeks, that's a lifetime. That's like an eternity. I don't know how we're sending people home after 3 and 4 and 5 weeks with massive spinal cord injuries, but we do. So how long did you get to reside at the great Kessler Institute?
I took it like an offer. I'm not sure what the initial offer was, but I kept campaigning for myself and
Mm,
begging. And I eventually got it extended a number of times where I got to stay for 7 months.
good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. And where did your parents stay when you were there? Were they going back and forth to Dubai? Were they staying in a hotel nearby? How did that all go down?
Coincidentally, we did have a townhouse, but of course, it wasn't accessible for me, but I wasn't going anywhere for those 7 months. So they
Yeah.
did have a place,
Mm,
and it was down the shore, so they would commute, which was obviously a lot. And we had friends and family visiting a lot,
nice.
coming to the rehab. And yeah, so they were able to make that commute every day. I had a lot of fear, as one can imagine, but
Mm,
being a younger woman,
right.
um, cut off from everything that I basically called home at that
Right.
particular point, and being in this institution, which at times it really did feel scary, I needed somebody to sleep with me. And it was probably more than 5 months until I was able to sleep alone,
Yeah.
where I
Oh
didn't have
yeah. You
somebody
need
sleeping on that chair next to me.
right. I had a roommate with me. Were you in a solo room when you were at Kessler?
Most of the time, but at times I did have roommates, but I still wanted somebody there. I just
Yeah.
could not imagine being that vulnerable and
Hmm.
people having access to me at any time where there was,
Yeah.
men just sleeping in a different room.
Right. Right. And my
You know,
least favorite part of my stay at Kessler was the night sessions where, you would be in bed and then like every 3 hours somebody would come in to have to roll
yeah,
you so you wouldn't get a sore. And they didn't just roll you, or they would like manhandle you. You'd be sound asleep. And then the next thing you know, you're getting rifled from your right side to your left side. And it's like, wow, This is a whole new world.
We could have an entire show about just the things that go on in rehab. Yeah.
We certainly could. And so, how about, I know these injuries rob so much from us physically, but what people might not realize is how much they affect us mentally. And so, as a 23-year-old woman, how did you sort of come to grips with all of this? All of a sudden, you're living this life, and next thing you know, you're a C6, C5, C6 complete quad.
You know, takes time, work, and consistency
It does.
to heal all the levels because, yes, while in that 7 months, I was training like I was training for, the Olympics. I was asking for an extra day and 6 days of OT and PT. What about my spirit that had been broken? What about the fact that my boyfriend had died?
Yeah.
What about all the loss that I felt, that I couldn't see those friends, that I couldn't have that community that I was living amongst embrace me, that I'd been pulled out. So it was not only the physical, you touched on the mental, but the emotional and the spiritual.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of people sitting vigil at times by my bedside, trying to introduce me to their religion or to their spiritual practice to give me some sort of peace. Definitely go on and on about that.
Yeah.
Mentally, I had my father sort of giving me a lot of acronyms and things that he had heard from military friends, and also being the child of somebody that was in the Egyptian Royal Navy, just that sort of militaristic sort of get your mindset focused in on that.
Right.
And I felt like I got a little bit of the nurturing that I needed from Dr. Kirschblum, but largely that support group or that community sense or even that one-on-one, it might have been introduced to me. And I think that for me, I experienced for myself, as well as some of the people I was close to at that time, resistance to
Right.
delving into the thing, to talking about all of it, not wanting to feel and relive that trauma, but that trauma lives in your body and stays with you, as we know, for years and years and years.
It does.
So I did get introduced to a number of modalities,
Hmm.
and it was a hard road healing. And in retrospect, I know what I needed. I know what I was vying for. I couldn't exactly get the space and time that I needed when I was at that rehab,
Right.
because I had infrastructure already in place within the family and the relatives that was difficult. So
Sure.
when this happened, it's like, how do you separate yourself? Because the road you want to forge as a 23-year-old. I need to be in like total silence now, or turn on the mantra, or
Right.
hear this meditation and not have people who are also grieving. And granted, the spinal cord injury doesn't only affect us, it affects the entire
Uh,
family system. But
100%.
how can you honor what the people in your family are feeling, but more importantly, honor yourself first to give yourself what you need to get
Yes,
through it?
absolutely. So
It's such
after
an
seven,
important part of my advocacy now.
yeah, yeah. So after 7 months, what now? What is Vanessa thinking? All right, I had all of this going on in my life and I wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And maybe now X, Y, and Z are not easily achievable from a power wheelchair. So what the heck are we doing now? What did you start to put your mind into thinking you're going to do with the rest of your life?
Right. I mean, through massage therapy and talk therapy and the time that I spent with friends and having cranial sacral massage. And I mean, I've tried almost all of it, and
Right.
I'd love to share that with anybody that needs help. I was able to, examine, and I had the fortune of going back to Dubai and saying, can this life be reconstructed? Can this business be run? Can this place be
Hmm.
physically, habitable? And be good for my well-being or not. And so
Hmm.
for many years, probably 2 to 4 years, I was really spending half the year in New Jersey and half the year in Dubai until it just became like I was avoiding weather.
Mm.
I was avoiding the weather patterns to stave off the pain that was now dictating my life, that was now ruling my moods
Right.
and ruling my productivity. as a writer, that was inherent to me as well.
Sure.
So it sort of, the writing on the wall became apparent to my father where, this inability to thermoregulate meant a new climate.
Mhm.
And so that's where California was introduced.
Aha.
At that
Go
time in
west, young
2007.
lady.
What do we know about sunshine? What do we know about vitamin D? But
Yeah.
Dubai,
Let's
that
do
might be
it.
a little bit hard.
Yes, yes. Well, obviously, you haven't let your spinal cord injury stop you from reaching the highest of heights, and your bio is an amazing testament to that fact. It begins with the following: Vanessa Osman is a voice artist, actress, model, and writer. If you could, please tell us how you decided on those mediums for your work.
Wow. Well, I told you I had that brush with theater at a young age, and I
Right?
loved to sing and I loved to dance, and it didn't leave me because I was now a quadriplegic. That spirit inside me that wanted to sing and dance and be a part of the arts and really express myself was
Hmm.
still so strong. And when I could get clear after a few years, I knew that I could still do it. I just wasn't sure how. And I had to start accepting to my innermost self that there was talent inside me. People kept saying, you should really do voiceover. And it's like, what happens at that point? You have to just leap and the net will appear. Just say, I'm going to show up to the studio. I'm going to
Yep.
take the class. Let's see what happens. It might not even be accessible. They might not be even willing to welcome me, but they
Right.
might. There
Hmm.
might be this chance that it just works out. And voiceover classes were for the first time in 2014 where I got to see that I still had this personality that could translate on the mic,
Hmm.
that animation and interactive for video game and commercial was the first time I went in the booth to try some of those scripts. I felt
Yeah.
so alive. It was the first
Hmm.
time I felt so alive in my body.
That's amazing.
And to have that just sort of work out and feel feasible and then make a closet at home be the place that I could fit my wheelchair in, very tight space, word, and play around and have that freedom to play and explore what else could be. Then, of course, in living in Los Angeles, I saw people in wheelchairs doing some pretty cool stuff. It's a very progressive
Yeah.
community,
Yep.
people in chairs, spinal cord injury groups. I was an ambassador with Triumph Foundation, helping people overcome their challenges to do a lot of sports. And
Yep.
a couple of the people attached to those casino nights and fundraisers were actors. We're
Right.
doing big things. And I
Yeah.
thought, I want to do that too.
Hmm.
Got a meeting with an agent, got signed for on camera work.
Look at
While I
you.
was taking those classes, we had a guest agent come and direct a class. And from there, he signed me for voiceover. So now here I was with two agents. And 2019, I booked my first on camera commercial with Google. I
They're
just had to
fighting
keep,
over you, Vanessa. It's great.
but it's just, I couldn't show up early on with my injury.
Yeah.
I didn't want anyone to see the truth of what had happened to me,
Right.
how my body had changed. Now that I was sitting in this iron throne,
Right.
everything was cropped. No one could take a picture of me. And if they did, it better be cropped. And I was sort of living an insular life until something changed and enough was enough. And I was
Right.
willing to come out and sort of embrace this new life. But that period of growth or that road to acceptance looks different for everyone, and so I honor what everyone's process might be. Mine
Yeah.
did take a little bit longer, but once it happened, it was like, oh, if I just keep showing up, if I
Hmm.
just keep trying, even if there's a no or I don't get chosen, something really beautiful could happen about this. And there's been so many times, on set or at home, even doing a Zoom with the teacher where you feel like you both got something out of it. It wasn't just the class and I learned from them, but they're like,
Right.
huh, it never occurred to me that I could teach somebody that was disabled. And it's the funniest thing because
Hmm.
we're sitting over here like, yeah, we're
Yeah.
not any different. We're just using a mobility device, but their
Exactly.
minds haven't expanded to that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
and the modeling. And, it was a little bit of stuff that I had done before the accident.
Hmm.
But again, just putting myself out there, wanting to show others, that helped me get out of myself. That helped me get out of my depression, my anxiety, my denial about the reality of my life.
Right. Taking the leap.
I was never so focused on walking. I was more focused on really making a good quality of life, a really well-rounded life again.
I have to tell you, I interviewed a gentleman. I can't recall his name right now, but he was a big surfer and outdoorsman back in the day, and he's been disabled for a number of years. And he told me, and it almost brought me to tears. And I'm not going to do justice to what his answer was, but he said, John, for me, walking is not what life is to me. He said it is relationships. It's getting back to being grounded and to having relationships with friends and with colleagues. And that to me is recovery. He said it's not about the walking. It's delving back into being a good person in society and being a good friend to a neighbor and helping out if you can. And it was like, whoa, it was so profound. And it sort of sounds like that's how you kind of got your feet back on the ground.
A sense of community, a
Yeah.
sense of belonging, putting myself out there, getting into a social scene, getting plugged in to even have like a service position, whether it's
Hmm.
just like a greeter at a support group or a peer mentor.
Yeah.
We have to sort of take that moment to, you know, if we're not present, get present. And then if we're too stuck in self, to get out of self somehow. And
Yes.
it's funny because you think, if I ignore me, how am
Hmm.
I going to figure it out? And it's like,
Right.
by doing all of this other stuff, you can calm yourself. And
Right.
and that way, being helpful to others, helps you to reesteem yourself.
It
You can feel
does.
good about yourself again. And then that kind of helps you regain your center and your focus to be like, what am I good at? What do I really want to do? Not like what's expected of me.
Right.
What do
Get
I
a
really
little
want to
wind
do?
in your sails. Yeah, no doubt. Here's a question. Did you feel once you made the breakthrough and sort of the butterfly has come out of the cocoon, if you will, did you have you noticed that it's harder sort of for you to kind of break through in some respects than it might be for your able-bodied coworkers and competitors in the field?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the space, but like I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
we can't control other people,
Right.
and sometimes their minds are not open to the idea of what could work. Therein lies a little bit of a responsibility sometimes, I feel, where I can show people it's not accessible, but here's what we can do, or me coming into the audition space can look like this, or I could come from this entrance. Or
Right.
if you come and shoot in my home, here's how, just offering solution. But it is very competitive. And
Yeah.
yes, sometimes we are competing in the
Hmm.
spaces with able bodied people, and there is that ableist mindset that discriminates against us. And I think
Right.
it's just our job to just keep showing up. But even to say that, there are tons of great artists out there that have all kinds of disabilities, and it's
Yeah.
very competitive in voiceover as well. This is not just the actors on camera world. There's many areas in which I have felt like it's not as easy. I mean, you can easily see on social media too. Look
Right.
at the influencer game now. It's
Yeah.
quite incredible what you can do to financially support yourself, but then also, just have that sort of whatever it is that you're angling for, clout or notoriety, or,
Yeah.
establishing a platform and using it to sometimes better yourself, but sometimes better the world.
Yeah. I listened to my niece and nephew. They were watching a show the other day and I said, "Who is that?" And they're like, "Oh, John, he's or she's the newest influencer that are out there." And it's funny, it's actually a gal that one of my friends from high school, her sister is now like running with this girl. She was on Dancing with the Stars and they're like best friends. And I'm like, how do these people make their money? And they, well, John, they're influencers. And I'm like, yeah. And what does that mean? How do they? So I'm here to throw my hat into the influencer ring. If anybody picks up this episode and they see me, call me. I'll be an influencer, whatever the heck that means. But yeah, I guess it's stuff that's out there. And so your back to your bio. Your accomplishments are many. I will read off a few, and then ask you to comment on them, if you will. You were the subject in the book Scarred for Life, a contributing writer for New Mobility, and can be seen in the Emmy winning Red Bull documentary film Any One of Us, which world premiered at South by Southwest and is now available on HBO. So take me through. Those are three pretty big things. And so tell me a little bit about each experience and how it affected you.
When I became an ambassador with Artists for Trauma in Los Angeles, I loved what they were doing to use art, and even the modeling entered into the picture as well, to help show others that they can heal from catastrophic injury. And through that, I met the wonderful artist Ted Meyer, who you have to go to his website after this,
Yeah, I do.
artyourworld.com or tedmeyer.com, but just showing how
Hmm.
medicine and recovery and art can intersect to heal people. And that's where his book, Scarred for Life, came up. Just painting these wild scars that people have and sharing their story was a wonderful thing to be a part of. And just to get into this group of what felt very progressive in Los Angeles, of people just doing stuff no matter what, and just challenging the norm. And there
Sure.
are many great spaces for this artwork to exist and for these conversations to happen.
Hmm.
So that really opened up my world. And that was a wonderful thing to be a part of. And that book's, I think he's done a lot more with that series. So he's a multimedia artist, and
Sure.
that was really incredible. You mentioned the
Writing
writing
for
for New
New Mobility.
Mobility.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I could
How did
not
that
wait to share
opportunity
my
come up?
story.
Yeah.
I think I was working with an editor. I had been featured with a number of wheelchair users like Toby Forrest, the actor, and Chelsea Hill, the dancer,
Mhm.
on the cover of the hub of Southern California. It was a great night in downtown LA where we did a fun photo shoot, and we went out clubbing on the
Clubbing.
nightlife, and talked about how accessible or not accessible that was. And
Mm.
from there, I met an editor who had done some writing for New Mobility and wanted my opinion and my feedback for managing pain-related strategies.
Okay.
I said, "Boy, do you have your girl," because I felt like I started at the lunch line for pill popping in rehab, which is what we all do.
That's
And from
right.
there, really needed an evolution, because I was like, this is not sustainable. I'm not clear-minded. It messes up your GI. There needs to be some other ways to
Oh, I
manage
know.
pain. That became such a great focus for me. But I
Hmm.
remember, I feel like that was like 2011. One of the things that I mentioned in that article, the thing that was totally revolutionizing for me, was getting into regular exercise, and not just, using an arm bike, but going out and getting to a place that did restorative exercise, where I would be on a table and I was working with an exercise physiologist, and seeing a gym that was truly adaptable for people of all abilities, and
Yeah.
being able to long sit and short sit and do some of the things that we did in rehab. That changed the game. And then
Yeah.
finally, through the gym and through that workout world and my commitment to really being in that headspace and surrounding myself with people that had that healthy mindset, I got some of my greatest friends. And it was my friend Aaron Baker. He's a motivational speaker and former athlete, and
Hmm.
currently doing a lot of great things, who asked me to come along to Red Bull
Right.
and be interviewed for Any One of Us, which is one of the points of great pride for me. That film was,
Hmm.
and still is, so touching. Even, I'm not in much of it, but the story is so well told, and it's on HBO Sports Docs, and just
Yeah.
so wonderful to see that somebody started recording their journey on day 2, and it's just goes through each of our stories so well,
Right.
to give person watching an idea of what a life-changing incident and a spinal cord injury, how it might change your world and affect others. So that was great to be a part of, and just fun to be a part of that cohort that was in the
Yeah.
film.
Absolutely. And we've talked about so many things that we have in common, from Jersey and spinal cord injuries and Kessler Institute. Another common bond we have is peer mentorship. I know that you work as a peer mentor with the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, as well as being selected for the Backbones SCI Leaders Program cohort. How fulfilling is that for you to help counsel individuals who, like you and I, have unfortunately had injuries like we have?
It's the bright spot of my life.
Mm,
It's the moment where it feels like the most real and I feel the most centered and complete and like I'm really living my truth and where I'm most needed to be able to work with somebody else who, needs answers or needs to express themselves. I want to give people the space that I wasn't given
right.
to through be, do, say, and try on whatever it is to help them get through
Yeah.
the pain and the chaos associated with this life. But let's face it, even before the injury, life was hard at times.
Yeah.
Knowing that we have safe spaces, and I know that word for me is often overused, but what does it mean? What is a safe space? It's a space that I can enter with one of my mentors, because I still do to this day, and
Yeah.
I just feel sigh. There's no pretense. Sometimes we get on Zoom to meet with each other, and I just end up in tears because it's a relief. It's a relief that I
It
am
is.
not having to put on my best self for my caregivers so that
Right.
they don't see how tough it is, or my husband,
Mm,
so that he doesn't have to internalize my pain.
right.
There's spaces for that. And
Hmm.
knowing that you can say, do, be anything, and I won't judge you, and I'm just here for it. That's rewarding. That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's the work I hope to be doing to the day I die.
Yeah.
I
And
also
how do you?
became a ESL tutor 2 years ago, helping people learn English, and now I've just been accepted to mentor people that, from my college that I went to, Emerson College. I'm
Okay.
like, "This is the thing, it's fuel," it's just
Yeah.
driving me to keep showing up.
Yeah. How about travel is not always easy for folks in chairs and folks that have had injuries of any kind. So, what were your main platforms for the community as a speaker at the 2025 Accessible Travel and Tourism International Conference in Dubai?
I think mostly my contribution there was showing what the disability can look like, because oftentimes I think people think about manual chairs and
Right.
paraplegics. There's some sort of ability there where they can handle themselves. But what if you're
Right.
like me, where your hands don't work, you're in a
Yeah.
power chair, and you're relegated to having an attendant with you at all times?
Yeah.
This was sort of groundbreaking, I think, at the 2025 conference. It was the Accessible Travel and Tourism International Conference that I was asked to speak on, about redefining disability and accessibility spaces, but also
Right.
the Abilities Expo, where you had all the vendors and kids and
Hmm.
people from all different walks of life and so many countries and so many delegates mixing, and just being able to look at each other and
Yeah.
have a conversation, to know or to learn all the things that you thought you knew. But it's until you're really in the mix there
Right.
that you see how far we have to go. We've made
Hmm.
great strides, here in the US and even in Dubai. They've done some really great things. They like to use their verbiage of people of determination when they refer to people with disabilities.
Right.
Great. And they're kitting out special spaces for people with disabilities to get around the city. And it's mind-blowing what is to come, because I've seen some of those future plans. But
Yeah.
that cannot be done without us. So yes, there were a lot of people from different boards and groups and airports, but us being there is the difference, seeing that stuff in action. So I
Yeah.
hope to be doing more of that, because that's the accessibility advocacy that I was talking about, but just
Hmm.
the travel too, how is travel truly inclusive? And where and how does that look like?
Yeah.
Why do I need to give up my arms and legs when I get on a plane?
Yes.
Why do I need to be transferred to a chair? Why do I need
Yes.
to be without my $60,000 wheelchair that you may or may not misplace, that you may or may not treat well? And then when I get
Yes.
back to my arms and legs, is it functional?
Sure.
Is it in the same condition I left? So, pushing for hopefully making accessible spaces on planes where we can bring our power wheelchairs and have them clamped down like we do in our vehicles and be able
Right.
to do a full power tilt and recline. I mean, that's the next level I'm hoping to get unlocked in my lifetime.
Yes.
That's what my
Yeah. That, and can you bring your emotional support pony with you if you want to in the aisle?
No, at least they allow for dogs in
Gosh,
most spaces. But there's
they
even
do.
legislation out there now. Yes, they do allow for the ADA dogs,
Mm.
but legislation exists, I believe, in Canada and in UK or Europe, where your caregiver would be part of your ticket expense, not an additional expense.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of,
That can really open the world. They know that this fact and figure is in the billions, that they miss out
right.
on billions of revenue by
Yeah.
not having access to people who have disabilities and their families who want to travel, who have the disposable income.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Well, you mentioned the support dogs.
recognizing hearing.
I have one sitting right at my feet right now. He's a Canine Companions for Independence. He's a half golden, half lab mix. His name is Yokin.
I
And
love it.
I forgot to leave my door open before we started recording here. His dinner is sitting outside and he's getting quite antsy here. So if you see me looking down, I'm trying to keep him at bay for another 5 or 10 minutes or so. But I wanted to touch on something that you brought up a while back, and the reason I bring it up is because I'm actually trying to get my hat in the ring. And I remember my first day in occupational therapy, my OT told me, she said, John, at this point, you cannot dwell on what does not work for you anymore, but you need to
Yeah.
accentuate what still does. And so for me being a C3-4 incomplete central cord syndrome quad, it's my big mouth or my voice, I like to say. And so talk to me a little bit more about the voiceover world and how, competitive it is and how, fruitful it can be and, some of the pratfalls that maybe I might be in my future.
I think when I first got into voiceover, I really just thought it was limited to like commercial video games and animation. I did not realize that there is a whole plethora of things that you can get into, like corporate narration and medical narration, e-learning. I mean, it just goes on and on. Trailers and promos, audio, um, audio description. Sorry, that's what I was thinking of.
Right.
Currently, I'm in 2 courses now learning about corporate narration and audio description for the blind and people with other disabilities.
Wow.
I did
Okay.
not know that existed.
So
So,
much.
I think it is very competitive, but it's amazing if you can get, you know, a a lot of training under your belt. We all think that we can wing it in the beginning, I think, when we have like a nice voice or, love
Yeah.
to talk. But getting that training and that foundational stuff has been incredible. And I've been lucky to work with some
Hmm.
of the best in Hollywood and
Yeah.
now even remotely. It's just amazing how our world really opened up because of the pandemic. Really, we have that to thank in
Yes.
2020. And one of the things that I miss touching on because of our experience, because yes, it is very competitive and sometimes
Right.
avenues will be cut off just because of inaccessibility. I realized that not only could I move anywhere during the pandemic because I was doing remote self tapes and emailing them into my agent anyway,
Is that
but
right?
that I
Yeah.
could write my own parts, that I could write my own commercial spots. That in
Hmm.
fact, if I wanted to be on screen in a certain way, I might write the story myself. And so I started writing with my husband. At the time, he was just some guy I was dating, but quickly, look what happened. We could talk
Yeah.
about online dating and being disabled for a whole episode as well, what
That's
that
another
looked like.
episode. Yeah, yeah. I could certainly
Yeah,
find that
but
because I am hopelessly single. Today's my birthday, 58 years old, and I've
I
been,
know.
my goodness gracious. Yeah, I need to get a
Happy
profile and put
birthday.
it out there. Thank you.
Well, I'm your girl. I will help you do that. But,
Please, please.
writing the profiles, I think that's how I got into it, is that I was helping other people write their profiles, and I thought, "Why don't I have one? I don't wanna date anyone in these circles." So just like that, I have this.
Yeah.
I'm 5'2" and I'm in a wheelchair. He's 6'4", and he's, a real athletic guy, and he's a wonderful person, and he's also in filmmaking, but we started writing a story, and
It's
we have
great.
come up with our TV pilot called Van Car, which we stole from Vanessa and Carlos, which
Okay.
is his name. And
Okay.
vancar.tv is our series that we are in post-production of, well, at least episode 1, where we have a quadriplegic as the main character.
Good for
And we have
you.
my friend who has
Let's
MS and in a
go.
wheelchair as a supporting character. Like, this is where the work exists. When you start opening your mind, it's not the sky's the limit, it's your mind is the limit. What can I write? What can I create to bring you in? Like,
Yeah,
I want to work with you, but I don't want to work with you because you're in a wheelchair and you're my friend, but I want to work with you if you're good talent. But if you're in a wheelchair, that's like a bonus for me because
exactly.
I know the opportunities are few and far between, and you've got that thing, you've got that life experience, you've got that unspoken je ne sais quoi that
Hmm.
gives you that edge, and that's what we need to turn people on to. You
Yeah.
know,
You should
we
do
don't get
some
the spotlight
motivational
just
speaking.
because we had the hard thing happen. Pardon?
Right. You should do some motivational speaking. You're getting me like I'm getting ready to kick the doors down here and get out there.
From your lips to God's ears. I mean, I'm ready for it. It's took me decades to get to where I
Mm,
am, to get clear, to
mhm.
realize that some of the things I was trying out and some of the crowds I was hanging with was only leading me right back down to depths of despair. It was
Yeah.
just the dark road. And I was like, alcohol has no place in my life. Drugs have no place in my life. Opiates,
Mhm.
as much as possible, for pain management, have no place in my life. Those are all distractions, right? These are all
Sure.
the things that, and it's not the arts that saved me, but boy, did they motivate me and steer me in the right direction. And it's not just the arts, it's the exercise, it's the physical activity. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about, is that I want to be the person that really champions and coaches people and motivates them to look at the 4 areas of
Yeah.
our lives that we need
Mhm.
to keep up with. It's the physical, it's the mental, it's the emotional, it's the spiritual. And we need
All
to
of the
go
above.
back before we can go forward.
Which brings me to my final question, Vanessa, which is one that I ask of all my fellow SCI friends. And that is, if I could snap my fingers right now and you would be completely able bodied once again, what do you think the first thing you would do would be?
Wow. So many things go through my mind, but the first would be drop to my knees, full bow to the earth, and
Mhm.
just kiss the ground. I just want to feel the earth. I just want to feel that grounding feeling. Probably take off and just run as fast as I can after that, and just don't stop running until I just can't run anymore.
Yeah,
Ideally, I would keep running until I hit the ocean because that's my happy place. That's the
it is.
thing I miss the most.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different answers. I've heard dance with my wife, kiss my kids, lift up my kids, and I had
Oh,
one friend who was I don't know, do you know Eric LeGrand? He was the football
yeah.
player that was injured. Yeah,
Yes.
Eric told me, "John, you wanna know the first thing?" He said, "The first thing you wanna know?" He said, "I would run out my front door butt naked right up and down the street," and so I got a kick out of that one.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's an answer that everybody is gonna have a different one for the most part, and it's something that hopefully down the road at some point, we're all gonna get to experience that with technology and with what they're working on, and hopefully in our lifetime, we'll be able to see something like that, but I appreciate your candid answer, and also, Vanessa Osman, I appreciate your time and now your friendship. I'm hoping that we're gonna keep in touch. You've got my juices flowing over here as far as things that I can still do with my life. And I'm not too over the hill yet, and there's a lot of interests that I have that are common with yours, and I really hope that we can stay in touch. And I am going to thank Dr. Jean Zanka tomorrow when I see her at work for putting the two of us in touch, and I will also give a heads up to the great Dr. Kirschblum that when the episode is fresh out of the oven, I will send him a link to that. And I know that I saw Rosa Bucci today, and she told me to say hello. And we've got a lot of friends in common, and it's nice to
You
call you
do.
one now as well.
And thank you, John, for the opportunity. It's just amazing for us to be able to show other people what is possible. Or
Yeah.
maybe you haven't even thought of it yet, but that the mind is the limit. And
Hmm.
hopefully we'll collaborate in the future. Who knows?
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. And so that will pull the curtain down on the first episode of 2026 and also the first video episode here of the Quadcast. And I will end my shows as I did all my audio shows, and that is that I am John McAlevey, and I thank you for your time.